We're back again. I know you're sick of us twice in 1 week. I know, I'm sorry. Welcome. This is Gray, or he might be on this side. You're somewhere, Gray. I think you're over there. I'm Trev, and this is the Trek Way, of course. And of course, we're back again because we told you last episode, we released an episode early. See, I don't pay him to do that. He does that for free. It's great. I love it.
He has a cup too. He just hasn't brought it out in quite a while.
I have it for tea and coffee when I have it the odd time, but then again, I'm mostly out of a can, out of a bottle, out of a glass if it's not coffee or tea or something, you know.
Out of a bottle if you're in a rush.
That looked inappropriate, Gray, but okay, I should clip that. I may clip that, actually. That could be my first YouTube short, actually. So yeah, as it's a riot. We haven't even started. It's a riot.
Yeah, I know.
So as we explained last time, we got that episode early because of San Diego Comic-Con, and while I mostly don't mind it was early, because it was a really good episode, I kind of wish they just stuck to their normal schedule and let it be exclusive for the Comic-Con guys, because they pay a lot of money for that ticket, Gray, so I would let them have that. But
and what's funny is it looks as if, well, it kind of is actually, 3 episodes happened like in 7 days or 8 days. You know, well, it's kind of like, what, is it on again?
Yeah, well, it's 7 days actually, if you're talking inclusive. So last week Gray gave it 9 out of 10, I think. That was a crossover episode with Lord X, and I gave it 9.5. And it could have easily been 10, but there was a few nitpicks that brought it down. It was almost perfect. We got another winner on our hands here, guys, without giving away the scores yet. This was... wow. Just this is what Star Trek should be. It was so good. I could not find a single flaw in this. I tried. Couldn't find a single flaw. And I think you agree the same, Gray, judging by what scores you'll tell us later.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. It was more like the stuff that Star Trek should be. Not that we dislike everything that's been going on with Strange New Worlds, but this is heads and tails, above what we've been getting. So
yeah,
good stuff.
I think it's just, I can't remember the two. There's one guy, Akiva Goldsman, that does write some of it, and there's another guy, I've forgotten his name. They come from the old regime, but they're not Alex Kurtzman, so it's not going to be as bad as Discovery and stuff was, but it's also not going to be as good as season 3 of Picard because it doesn't have Terry Metalis on it, so it's kind of somewhere in that middle level-ish, judging by some of the scores we've given some of the episodes. So, we'll crack in here because I really, really enjoyed this. We thought, Gray, this was going to be... it was going to
Gorn.
Be the... the Gorn episode.
It was going to be Gorn when I heard,
But that's going to be episode 10, I think, now, judging by the looks of things, isn't it? So
probably.
We'll take it. But yeah, so we kick off here. The Enterprise is escorting a Klingon ambassador, right? And he's not your normal ambassador. This ship that he was in was kind of cool. I think that was a Starfleet vessel, wasn't it, that the ambassador was in? Because it just looked like it had been squashed. It's kind of cool, actually.
Right, he's working with the... I can talk. He's working with the Federation, so Federation ship.
Yeah,
there is an ambassador class ship. I don't know if that was it. I didn't take a good look.
No, it's not. It's not. The ambassador class ship is.
That came later.
Is it the Enterprise B? No, it's not Enterprise B. It's the one that's Enterprise C. That's ambassador class, I'm sure, or it's something that looks like the Galaxy class, similar.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's ambassador. Tell me if I'm wrong, people. Though I might be wrong.
No, you probably are, because we forget we're working on different timelines, and if anybody's forgetting at this timeline, the Klingons are the bad guys. So
yeah, still
before peace was made.
Before peace was made, it was more of a ceasefire moment. I think they are at the moment. It's a kind of, I don't think it officially. No, they're not at war. The war's ended, but they're not
the
friends.
War's ended, but they're still PO'd at each other for anything. Pretty much.
You can say that. So yeah, he's not your usual ambassador. The reason being, he'd actually defected from the Klingons a little while back, and we obviously find out a bit more about him later on in the episode. He's helping the Federation out, as Gray said. But as he's literally coming on board, Ortega doesn't like him, trust him. She's talking about the ambassador on the bridge to Uhura, and Uhura's trying to say, give him a chance. And Ortega's, well, I was in the war. Of course, she was in the war. She knows what it's like. He's not a great guy, and maybe this is the long con to try and play the good guy and then try and get Federation secrets. Right. And then I think she kind of just loses her shit a little bit. And he's this, that. He's the butcher of Jagul, which is the planet we talk about later in the episode. And just as she says that, the ambassador walks on onto the bridge, and
with Pike and everybody, and it's like, oh boy,
someone's in trouble.
And after all that too, man, when they walked past her or whatever, I mean, Pike, rightfully so, gave Ortega like the death stare.
Oh yeah,
he's like you are in a mess of trouble.
It was the daggers. It was the look that could kill you. You know. It was, she'll get in trouble for sure for that one, but it's just bad timing. I guess she didn't think he was literally about to come on the bridge at that time. It was literally Una that went, "Captain on bridge," just something to grab her attention, and it worked. Right. Down in the officers' quarters after, that's what we're calling it. Well, actually, no, like the officers' mess, not officers' quarters, because they've all got their own quarters each, don't they? The officers' mess, because I don't know its official proper name. Poor man's 10 forwards, 9 forwards, because it's a 9 forward.
I think, this is where the room where Pike is cooking, right? That's actually, I think that's Pike's quarters, because Pike's private quarters are on the bridge.
Oh, they lead on from the bridge, don't they?
Yeah, most captains' private quarters tend to be close to the bridge, so they can just,
But they don't have a ready room beside the bridge, and then they'll have their quarters on the same deck or like a deck below or something. That's usually.
Yeah, but the ready rooms are used more for talking about strategy, what's going on. This was supposedly supposed to be more of a social affair, right? He's an ambassador. They're trying to make him feel good and all this stuff.
See if you think of Picardo in Enterprise D and E, that isn't his quarters beside the bridge. That's his office, for the want of a better phrase, and then he'll have his quarters somewhere else where he sleeps. So imagine it maybe it's not the same in Enterprise. It is.
I have to look at. I remember seeing it on a diagram of a lot of the ships. I'm not going to sit there and I'm not like Trek yards. They know everything. But I do remember seeing that the captain's quarters are usually very close to the bridge, just so that he can come right out or whatever. So he's not going to go traveling all over the ship to find his quarters. It's going to be like, put it right there.
That makes sense. It probably does make sense. It most likely was his captain's mess, I guess we'll call it. Actually, no. This the mess, because this is where Spock's making the drink for the Rattagino, which is Klingon coffee from Deep Space Nine, of course we know.
Well, also Pike had cooked some stuff too, because you see the dish that he cooked, because he borrowed that spice from Mbenga later on in the show or whatever.
Yeah, the spice that can kill you if you have too much of it in one go, but.
We keep this going on. It's going to be a Star Trek foodie show before you know it.
Yeah, well, think of a Star Trek foods-related show. Give me some puns. But yeah, okay, so in this mess, Spock, this is... I do want to get Gray's opinion on this, because he obviously remembers the TOS series better than I do, for sure. Spock's making a new drink that got the recipe from that Klingon when he was down in the planet, trying to get to know Klingons better and having some blood wine, and this Klingon liked him and gave him the recipe for Rattagino, which I didn't know how to spell off my head, so I definitely Googled that. And I couldn't remember what type of drink it was, so it obviously told me Klingon coffee, which sounds great to me. So, half coffee, half blood wine. And I hear a noise that was very familiar as he's testing it out, Spock, and I turned my head for a moment, Gray, okay? And I recognised that noise. It was the exact same food replicator noise from the TOS whenever they used any food replicators there, And I was like, yep, that got me. And I turned around, I saw him, he's practicing this. It's a new-ish kind of technology to them. Great. Obviously, TOS takes place after. From the best of your memory, they were using food replicators, but were they using them like they were in Next Generation, Voyager, Deep Space Nine? like
No,
all
the
the time.
food replicators were probably similar-ish to what we saw in Strange New Worlds, but actually, since they've updated Strange New Worlds a little bit, the old food replicators, I remember when you saw them, they actually used to carry these cards, and they had like a red card, a yellow card, and a whatever other color card, and they would
Rations.
actually stick a card in a slot, and then the replicator would make the food. So it was almost like the card was encoded with whatever it is you want to make.
Yeah.
You had to physically stick the card in, and then it made the whatever food for you. I can remember episodes of TOS doing that, and then eventually I think they kind of got rid of that and just said, whatever, and then it would do it. It would do it for them.
Just ask for what you want.
Yeah, right. To be really honest, they didn't show the replicators that much. It's only occasionally.
Did you have the sliding door for the food? Because if you remember,
Yeah.
yeah. Because obviously they can't. They didn't have the effects to materialize out of thin air. But
It was almost like a cafeteria in a way. They would walk over to a wall, and you would see like 3 of these doors with the slots above them, like I said, and then people would just go up there and they'd shove a card in, and then and the door opens up, and there's
I wish
whatever.
I wish they'd done this in Strange New Worlds, Grey, because it's kind of, I know you're trying to make things look better, but you could have shown the camera of inside the replicator replicating the thing to show that it is better than it actually seems. But then the door opens and they take it out, because that's not supposed to be around, really. I mean, I am nitpicking, of course I'm nitpicking, but I just remember the original. Well, it's not the original because it's NX. The NX Enterprise. That I loved that they were not using replicators for food for the most part. They were only capable of so much certain items. They couldn't do complex items. Most of the food was made fresh on board by the chef, who you never saw ever. You just saw from the neck down. And they could order some ingredients from that, like some drinks, things like that, and then add it together. I liked how that evolved. That was a door as well, great, but yeah, I like Star Trek technology. It kind of fascinates me.
Yeah, it's nice to just kind of looking back, and we should write a book, The History of the Replicator.
Oh God, right? Okay, you're being definitely facetious now. You could have mentioned other technologies, and we could have made it more interesting.
Look, we'd at least sell 1 or 2 copies. I mean, come on.
Yeah, because we'd be buying them. So yeah, it was nice to see the food replicators doing their thing, even though if they seemed a bit too futuristic for that point in time. Now, the bastard comes in just at the right time. Mr. Spock introduces himself and says, "We've got a drink for you. I got this recipe from this Klingon, blah, blah, blah. Would like you to try it." And he puts his hand on it, and it scalds him, it burns him, and you just see the bastard turn around with like a scowling look of his own to Spock, and Spock's like, "I'm so sorry, bastard, we're still working out the kinks." Like, yeah, put it back there's a way for you to put it back behind the sliding door and make it some other mechanism, because that clearly didn't work. He was pissed.
Well, I like the Klingon bastard goes like, "Well, it's a good thing Klingons have a high threshold for pain."
I didn't stop him going, "Ugh."
Yeah.
Vulcans have a even stronger,
As
pain
we saw in the
tolerance.
previous episode or whatever.
Exactly.
Yep.
So yeah, it's still a newish technology, so that you kind of understands that. So Pike wants to take him down to sickbay, and I'm thinking it's a bit far fetched for a Klingon. They're kind of tough warriors, and the bastard's like, nah, I'm good. But Pike pushes the point, I insist, come down. And I'm glad he does, because it pushes on the plot nicely, Gru, which we get to. It's so good from here. They go to sickbay. They're going to use the dermal regenerator in his hands, do the thing. But as soon as he walks in, Mbenga clocks him from the other side of sickbay, and literally looks like he's just seen a ghost, and starts backing up, and he just disappears around the corner. And Chapel then says to him, "I've got this." She obviously, as we find out later on, she knows what's going on here. She looks after the situation. And Gray, this is a point you added on at the end here that's kind of important and where the direction of this episode goes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, basically, you see him go off to another room, and he's like basically falling over, and he's grabbing his chest, and he's obviously going into a severe panic attack. And as we know, PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, is a real thing, especially people that come back from wars or from fighting. And you can see that he's definitely got something going, and this all just triggered him. And so he's like, pounding on his chest, trying to calm down, and stuff. And I think he even had a hypo ready for whatever to give him if he needed it and stuff. But yeah, he was like really freaking out. So when we're seeing this, you're just going like, wow, there's got to be some history going on here, because why would he be that whacked out? I mean, Chapel was whacked out too, but not as much as M'Benga. So it was getting like, okay, something heavy's happening here.
It's a good point. That is a good point. Yeah, he was really freaking out, and I would love to have known what was in that syringe of his. I guess it was just something to calm him down, but it could have been some more of that super serum stuff. Who knows? Now, we're going to investigate this Klingon War finally. Gray and I have been asking for this for a while. Let's see these things that Ortega's went through, that M'Benga's went through, and I'd actually forgotten M'Benga went through it until this episode. Chapel as well. And we finally get to bloody see it. And it makes sense that those three have seen it, because the rest of the Enterprise must have been, during the Klingon War, they're on their 5-year mission, right?
Right.
They're not called back to the front. Maybe similar to why the Enterprise E wasn't called back to Wolf 359, because no, was it Wolf 399? No, it was Sector 001. That was after. Yeah. They were left out there because they're the flagship. That's got to remain what it is. You could argue it should be involved in the fight, but you could also argue that is your poster ship for the whole, what you stand for. Right. It's got to remain above anything else.
Right. We don't want morale to dive down if it gets blown up or something.
So I agree with it, but part of me thinks they should be in the fight as well. So while they're away in the fight, they're not in the fight at the Enterprise. They don't at the time have Ortega and M'Benga or Chapel. They're fighting in the Klingon War. It's 3 other officers that we don't know the names of, or that I'm not aware of, that are on that first 5-year mission, or is it the second one? So these guys are obviously going through a lot, and that's what we start to discover here now. We get our first flashback to the Klingon War. Nurse Chapel is deployed to Jagal, right? I probably spelled that incorrectly, but who cares? Which sounds like a great name for a planet. And as soon as she arrives, she becomes head nurse right away. And there's a bit coming up here of someone important in this episode that Gray's noted down here. The guy, basically, the head doctor, is leading the place. And Gray, I know you get to him in a moment. I saw him and I went, there's something familiar about this guy. And as Gray will tell us in a moment.
As soon as I saw him, I knew exactly who he was.
Really was. He seems out of place, but in place at the same time. It's weird. But he's basically, he's just running the place. He's organising things like, you do this, you do that. Chapel, you're now head. She asked for the head nurse. I get a funny feeling the head nurse died. You're now the head nurse, Nurse Chapel. She's like, oh, right, okay, nice one. This is where it starts, unfortunately. And what I found interesting and galling at the same time, interesting and not I got off in this kind of thing, just I'm interested in war and the mechanics of it, not in a negative way. I just like to learn from stuff that's happened in the past. I'm interested in World War II stuff, Gray, so I like to know how these things happened. We don't get off in this, we're just interested in it. You start seeing scores and scores of people beaming in, literally when they're injured. This is the futuristic battlefield. They're not brought in trucks, they're beamed in, even in pieces sometimes. And there's literally scores of them, and the transporter or the computer keeps saying, transport incoming, constantly, and there's just waves and waves of them. And it just seems like it's too much for them at the start. In the background, we'll talk about that, Gray. You see the shooting and the fighting and the phaser turrets in the background, and it looks like a proper war zone, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. To me, it looked very similar to, I mentioned it later on. I don't know if you guys have ever seen MASH, the movie or the TV
I know of it, but yeah.
MASH stands for Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. So the MASH units were used a lot in the Vietnam War, literally picking up a surgical hospital and moving it to a spot, to another spot, to another spot.
Yeah.
And it was so much like that, almost exactly like that, actually, where the wounded are constantly coming in. And on MASH episodes, you would hear the same thing, where you get the guy comes on the loudspeaker and just says incoming, 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 incoming.
Yeah.
Oh, and the same thing happens. And it was just a futuristic version of exactly a MASH type situation. And the
Interesting.
things that they dealt with, again, similar to a MASH episode, was the same thing. When they were told that there is no organ replicator around, so they can't do anything. They can't take care of them in a newer fashioned way. They have to go back to the old school way, literally. So
Yeah.
they're actually just sewing people up and trying to find organs from other people that have died and make
Old
and
school.
transplant. And it was just really, and it was a horrible scene, but it was meant to look that way because
Yeah.
that's what it was all about.
Yeah. 100%.
So it was really getting wild and emotional because stuff was just going down like every second.
It hits home. It really hits home seeing that.
Yeah.
You're interested in it in a kind of learning way. You're not. I wouldn't watch that and go, "Oh, this looks brilliant." I'm just in awe of what happened, and this is a futuristic portrayal of what would happen. To be honest, here, there's one guy that beams in though, who is literally. I mean, there's like holes in him, and these like guts are half hanging out, and he's a mess. This guy. And that's where Gray mentioned the thing about the organ replicator, which I didn't know was a thing. That sounds brilliant. You've got this that would normally do its job. However, they are in war; they don't have it. So Gray says they need to do things the old school way. But this guy will die without getting the parts replaced that he needs instantly. So, and Benga does his transport pattern buffer trick that we see in season 1 with his daughter, which was brilliant. He'd done it loads of times. He said, "Listen, let's get the guy. Let's put him back into the buffer. We'll hold his pattern as long as the power remains there. He's good until we need to take him out." Obviously, with his daughter, he had to take him out every now and again to make sure she's still good. But and we find out later on that goes south as well. So that was a bit galling. But Greg, do you want to tell us about the head doctor, if you want, and why he's important?
Yeah, the first field doctor that she met up with when she found out that she was going to become head nurse was Clint Howard. And Clint Howard is Ron Howard's brother, the famous director and actor on Happy Days, etc. And Clint has a long history with Star Trek shows. The first episode he ever did was a character called Baylock in the original series episode, The Corbomite Maneuver, which was actually a really good episode. And he was only 7 years old when he played the alien, but he was like a super intelligent baby-looking alien, which was kind of neat. And then he played Grady in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. He also played Muck in Star Trek Enterprise. He also played in Orion and Discovery first season, and now this guy Buck Martinez in Under the Cloak of War. So he's been around since 1966, playing parts in Star Trek. All through these shows.
Wow,
It's great. I like how they do that though. They keep bringing back like certain veterans, or whatever. Little side story too. I believe just about every movie or every single movie that Ron Howard's ever done has always had his brother in it. He always has a part for his brother, no matter how big or small it is. The brothers appeared in almost every single Ron Howard movie he's ever done.
There you go.
What the heck, man? Spread it to your family, right?
Oh yeah. That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. So like I said to Gray, I recognise him somehow, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. That's why. And this is his first human part. Right? When you were reading through that list there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was. Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, which is
as far as a human goes, he's playing some kind of alien every other time.
So I like Trek royalty where they have these guys that do multiple parts. The guy that I'm always forgetting his name. The guy that was in Deep Space Nine, Wei-Yun, the I can't remember the species, the ones that are genetically cloned that look after the Jem'Hadar. Jeffrey Combs, that's it. He plays Andorian in Enterprise as well. I love guys like that that just play multiple roles. Brilliant.
If you do a little research, there's a couple of actors that are playing like multiple roles in Star Trek that you don't always remember.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's nice, yeah.
So yeah, that was a kind of eye-opening scene, that one there. Back on the Enterprise, Pike invites Chapel and Mbenga to dinner with the ambassador that they very much dislike. You can tell it's going to be difficult for them. But I think, to be honest with you, Gray, while they're a bit reluctant and he can't force them, well, he probably could, but morally he couldn't force them. They both said, yeah, we'll go. And I think it's because they want to help Pike out. They want to help their captain out. So because they're trying to do this peace thing. So
trying to help him. It's out of respect for your captain. So you got to kind of suck it up and go. But boy, as soon as I heard they were going to go, I'm going like, oh boy, this is.
Oh, I get images of Star Trek
well.
6. I around the table with Goron.
Yeah.
And I'm
well,
just
you remember when in that particular episode, Shatner said the only good Klingon is a dead Klingon.
and he got overheard as well. Someone recorded him as well. So this is why we gave it such a high score later on, because I think subconsciously we're at least thinking of Star Trek: Sixth Undiscovered Country, which is my second favourite of the TOS movies. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So they suck it up, as Gray says, and they're like, yep, sure, Captain, no problem. We get more flashbacks with Chapel and Mbenga trying to save someone's life. And this was touching on what Gray said before. They don't have the proper tools they need for the job. So the guy's heart literally stops, gets into cardiac arrest. And Chapel's like, what do we do? Well, we need to get it started again. Massage his heart. And she's like, oh, okay, right. She wasn't quite expecting that, but she's, I guess, trained to do that technically. So, and she goes.
Yeah, well, she was awfully scared about that because they didn't have the proper equipment. So she's sitting there going like, I got to do this manually, and it's like, yeah, you can do it. And it was a very tense scene because they kept on looking at each other, going like, I got you, I got your back, I got you, and okay, and then she did it, and stuff. And that's also in real life. That was also done in
they still do that
units as well as
They don't really need to do it as much now because they've got the paddles, but Gray's right. Sometimes you need to go back to the basics, and the guy revives, and he does survive, and they pass him on to the next team to sew him up and whatnot. Moving on. As I said before, understandably, Mbenga, Chapel, and Ortega are three here, are war guys that have been through a hell of a lot, are struggling with the dinner as we get more flashbacks to Jugal. We see an Andorian captain. I think he's an Andorian captain, or at least he was the leader of the unit. Gray, do you recall his position, the Andorian?
I thought, if I remember correctly, he was Black Ops, they said. And that's why they had the Black Ops kind of dark uniforms and stuff.
Yeah.
Everything was gray and black. So he was part of the Dark Ops operation, this Andorian.
Yeah.
And he keeps on coming to Mbenga. And now we're learning a little more about some of the backstory on Mbenga. So he's coming back to him, talking to him like, we need you. And and then we start learning about why he needs him. And it was really interesting.
It kind of makes sense, actually. Like, this Andorian captain is trying to get Mbenga into the fight because he has heard the rumours. Well, they're not rumours, but I guess at the time they were, that Mbenga has the most hand-to-hand kills confirmed. A doctor, hand-to-hand, nuts. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Doctors, in theory, could be brilliant killers. They know exactly where to hit you. But he says Mbenga's moved on. He says, no, with respect, I'm just a doctor now. I'm glad he wasn't forced to do that, actually, which I thought that might have been a thing that came up, but he wasn't. So maybe being a doctor, you're immune from that. But then the doctor asks him for the super serum, if you recall, Gray. Yeah. And that's the super serum we saw earlier on this season with him and Chapel become really, really strong. I was calling it green Red Bull, but then Gray was just calling it Mountain Dew, which makes probably more sense, to be honest with you. So really, really strong concentrated stuff.
At least this time, though, he was saying what it was, because he explained in the course of the conversation.
Yeah,
he said it boosted your adrenaline. It had pain inhibitors, and whatever other cocktail stuff is in, is in this thing. And he
Yeah.
obviously told the guy, he said, this is not really good for your body,
It's not, no.
But the guy's going like, yeah, but I need an edge and I'm fighting right now. He goes like, just give it to everybody, all my soldiers. And he's like, nah, can't do that.
Quite right, yeah. It's one thing to endanger your own life and your own health, but it's another to do it to other people. So no, he's not one to do it, understandably. And it was something to do with some Starfleet Order 12 or something like that, where they were developing this serum. Obviously, it wasn't just in Mbenga on his own. It sounds like it was something wider within Starfleet, but it was dropped because he tried to use that under Starfleet Order 12. Give me some of that stuff. Oh, we've stopped making that now. I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry, it's not. You can't have that anymore. But
it's stuff like that actually did happen. There were drugs that they used to give
yeah,
soldiers and stuff that you never even knew about.
Yeah,
and stuff, and they had to put the kibosh on that.
Captain American type stuff as well, like lower the scale, but try to make you stronger, Grey, don't they? Like whatever they need.
I don't know how true it is because I don't know everything, but even in the defense department now, when pilots are flying these sophisticated jets, they can't afford to go to sleep. So they're giving supposedly some kind of safe barbiturates or whatever that basically keep them awake for days at a time.
Yeah.
Now they've studied this. They know how long that a body can put up with that before you're going to have to rest.
Yeah.
So they obviously, move pilots in and out, different pilots and stuff. But that stuff happens because it has to happen in war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Unfortunately, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, back at the dinner, because we're getting flashbacks between the dinner and Jagal War, or the war at Jagal. Ortega is kind of had enough a little bit, which I knew there'd be who's going to snap first. That I thought it would probably be Ortega. She doesn't snap per se, but she's had enough. As she remembers the Klingon battle cries from back in the day, and her Klingon sounded great, by the way. She kept saying it several times, and I'm not going to try and do it because I will butcher it. But basically, the English translation is remain Klingon, and that was the battle cry when they were going into war to slaughter whoever was there. They would say that over and over, and that's in Ortega's mind now. She knows that's possibly why, not as an actor, as the character, she knows it inside and out. Grace, she's heard it so many times, man. It's like a nightmare slogan now, or term. Yeah. But yeah, she leaves. She kind of does it in an orderly kind of way. I think you would normally ask for permission to, almost like your parents' table. Captain, may I have permission to leave? She didn't do that. She just walked out.
She didn't know what to do, so she just walked out instead of getting nuts.
I would have maybe asked Pike for permission, but fair enough. At least she didn't kick off. Chapel goes after her. Nice excuse for her to get out of Dodge, and also to make sure her friend was okay. Chapel goes after her, and Mbenga stays, which was respectful, but he was struggling, wasn't he, Gray?
Oh yeah, though he was gripping the handle of the chair he was sitting in. It looked like he was going to tear it off. And Pike sees him doing this with his hand, and so smart on his part, he just turned to him and said, "Oh, maybe you should go check on Chapel. She might need your help." It's like, "Yep, okay, I'm out of here."
Yeah, and that's what any good captain would do. You recognise this kind of thing, and the well-being of your crew. And he's obviously seen that he was struggling. I thought he was literally going to rip the arm off that chair.
Oh, yeah.
He's trying to suck it up. That's how you go nuts, though. You don't vent and find a way to do it sooner, and you just flip the lid. So yeah, he leaves. The three that had the problem said no have all now left, because during this dinner they're all laughing and chuckling quite a bit. And if I'm one of those three, Grey, I would be struggling to see everyone chuckling and smiling and getting on so well. But they didn't go through what those three went through.
Yeah, I don't think they're actually. I think they were just putting on an act because they wanted to make sure that the captain was, represented well enough. But yeah, I also think that was part of the reason why the outburst happened, because they were acting as if everything is wonderful. It was getting on their nerves even more.
Yeah.
So in actuality, it was worse, and finally they just kind of, snapped or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought Ortega was going to take a glass or something and break it and try to stab him. She was like,
she handled it really well, mate. Yeah. She handled it the best, I think, considering.
Yeah.
But everyone goes through these things and have different memories, I guess. As Mbenga's leaving, though, just as he's about to pass the ambassador, the ambassador like grabs him by the hand, kind of thing, like one last thing moment, you know. And I just to see the look in Mbenga's face, and I was just like,
God,
oh
it was
no.
As soon as he grabbed his arm, I'm sitting there going, no, this is not going to be good.
He's going to smack him.
Which was great because the writing and the acting was so good in this episode. I mean, you were actually getting your own you're getting your own emotionality watching this because you're sitting there going like he grabs his arm and he's going like, no, this is going to go bad any second now.
But thankfully he didn't. He was a good Starfleet officer and he showed restraint. The ambassador that was saying basically he'd heard that I can't remember the technique, the form of fighting that they have, but I think we both missed it. I don't think it's really relevant. Obviously, Ambassador had heard that Mbenga does his own kind of form of martial art training, and he said, look, I would like to have a session if that's all right. Can we spar? And we'll do full contact, you know, because that's not something they always do. And he said he'll check his schedule and get back to him. I thought he would just automatically say, great, yeah, it's on like Donkey Kong, but he didn't.
Yeah, I didn't think he was going to do it the way he was answering, you know, but then I kind of figured for the story, it's got to happen somewhere.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely. But yeah, so that fight does definitely come later on, believe you me. I liked the next part, Greg, because we had we're back on Jagal, back in the past, and the guy that had his heart massaged, who you thought was maybe not going to make it through, he'd recovered. He's got that futuristic Starfleet pad on him. You know, the I don't know what it's called.
Probably dermal regeneration.
Gauze or something like fancy. Yeah, he's recovered. He's been stitched all up and whatnot. And maybe stitched up because they don't have the tools to like fuse everything together now. And the guy was kind of struggling at this point. He'd actually made his way out of the tent and was sitting watching the war. That was a bit awe-inspiring. Like he walks out, and I was thinking, please, I really hope a sniper doesn't take him out or something. I was waiting for it. He sits down. He just takes it all in, Gray. He looks at what's unfolding in front of him, the war, the phaser turrets, the explosions, the destruction, and he just looks so down. But Mbenga gives him the speech. He's like, the guy was like, what am I doing here? You know, and I thought we were explorers and we're about peace and stuff. And Mbenga's speech is beautiful. He's basically saying, you know, yeah, we are, but if we don't fight for this right now, the Klingons will literally go on and take every colony in the sector, in the galaxy, and work their way along. We have to stop them somehow so that other people can enjoy the peace that we once knew. And what a speech from Mbenga, man. Brilliant.
Yeah.
You know?
And it pretty much echoes in real life. Which is always what makes Star Trek good. Because in real life, it's the kind of speech that soldiers are given. Because if you're not fighting for what is right, you're basically making it a worse world for the next people.
Yeah,
you know, behind you. So it was really grounded in real stuff that goes on. But yeah, it was a great speech.
It certainly was. Just the talent of the actor, I guess, really, and the quality of the writing. Sure. So this there's a special ops mission that's going to go ahead. This is where this kind of coming from, and at this stage, I think I was jumping ahead a little bit here. At this stage, the boy comes out of the tent later on. The guy that had his heart massage almost died. He came out and he was in one piece. Ready to go, and this was a little bit surprising, but not surprising at the same time, because the speech that Mbenga gave has clearly done the job and worked. The first boy out there is the guy they saved, and I was just like, wow. You can see then, though, on Mbenga's face, he's the shock and horror. He's like, oh no, and he walks up to him really quickly, Gray, and he's like, what are you doing? And if you're in Mbenga there, how awful are you feeling? You're like, I've just convinced this guy to go back to war, like where I could get you signed off in the sick, no problem.
I don't think he didn't anticipate the guy actually wanting to get back into the fight, that quickly. And so he starts to feel bad because he gave the speech, which was a correct speech.
Yeah.
But he still feels bad that the guy's going to go back out there. But the guy said to him, "Look, I'm a soldier. This is what I do. Just like you said, we have our jobs."
Yeah, we do.
And there's really nothing he could say, and he just told him to keep his head down and fight hard.
Yep.
And that's all I could tell him.
So as Gray says, he does the right thing. We can't give him a hard time for not doing the right thing, but the right thing ends up in him actually now wanting to fight on. And even though he could get him signed off in the sick, he doesn't. The guy that almost died, he heard what Mbenga had to say, and he's like, no, I will fight on. You know, I'm a soldier after all. At the end of the day, and Mbenga just feels awful. He goes off and does his thing. I didn't really I felt sorry for him in that situation, but I think he also knows. He also feels bad, Gray, because he knows this special ops mission after talking to the Andorian captain, leader, whatever his exact position was. He was the High Hegian anyway there. He knows it's going to be a meat grinder, this mission, because they can find a way to actually win the war at Jagal. And they don't go into details of what this is because it's kind of relevant, but they know a lot of people will be mowed down in them trying to achieve their goal. And, people are mowed down later on as we get to. The next scene, though, it gets dark at times, of course it does, but this is why we'll get to this at the end, it's why I love Star Trek, because it always comes back to the light somehow. Unlike Discovery, which was too dark too often. The next scene's hard for Chapel, though, I would say, Gray, because the special ops team are coming back, and the transporter is going even more nuts than it was before. The computer voices incoming constantly. They have to get people off the pad, and they're hit by enemy fire. The power goes down. The backups kick in. The only way they can resolve this situation to get more people beamed in for patching up and stitching up is to reset everything. But remember the guy near the start that was guts hanging out. He's in the pattern buffer. He needs emergency power to that replicator transporter to keep him going, and they have to reset everything. Now they're pulling things out, and they get to the last cable, almost about to pull out, and I get flashbacks of Boimler and the big blue button. I hate to admit this. There is one button at the top, a red button. Why is it always a button? They just treat us like idiots. It's hilarious. And Chapel's, I can't do it. He's in there, and Mbenga just very cold. But I don't blame him. Again, don't blame him. He just got up and goes, bang, pattern, and you see it on the Elcar's display. Yeah. He's got like a code, if you like, and you see it there, and then gone. And I was like, wow, that was difficult. That was hard to watch.
It was a heavy scene because he took the brunt of it so that she didn't have to.
Yeah.
And then when she sat there going like, no, and he says others have to live.
Yeah.
And that's a decision. And again, very much like real life. Like I said, in these MASH episodes that you watched, a lot of that stuff had to happen then too. It was always hard on the crew when they just finished patching up somebody that they end up losing them.
Yeah.
And stuff. And it's just, it's tough. And it was a very good and powerful scene because it's, what are you going to do? War as hell, and it's called that for a reason. So.
And that's what Mbenga does. That's his experience shining through, his qualities as a friend, because they're clearly not just colleagues but friends after this. They're on first name basis to look out for each other. They've got this saying, I've got you. This is what they keep saying to each other throughout the flashbacks and on the Enterprise, because they are good friends as well. They've got each other's backs. We now get the fight of... I was going to say the fight of the century. We'll call it the fight of the year, maybe, on all the box office channels. It's the spar with the Ambassador and Mbenga, and I'm looking forward to this. I don't know why. Maybe I just like a little bit of chaos, Gray. The
first thing the Ambassador said is, "I didn't think you were going to come."
Well, yeah. He did.
That, yeah.
He did say that. I, of course, want your opinion at the end of this point, Gray, because how it happened is not how I thought it would go. I'll be honest with you.
Right. Me too.
The bastard literally, despite Benga being really good at this form of martial arts or defending or sparring, whatever we're calling it, the bastard knocks him on his ass 3 times in a row. And they're talking in between and taking little breaks and whatnot, and they're not literally going for each other's throats. They are going full body contact as they agreed before, but it isn't too nuts. And this is what was surprising me. But after 3 times in a row, he's saying, the bastard, to Mbenga, listen, I want to work with you, not as friends, but I want to work with you because if people see 2 former enemies working together, this is a powerful message to what's going on. And he's right. It really would be if it came to that. And Mbenga's keeping his cool all the way through this to the best of his ability, because the ambassador hadn't set him off too much. But when he starts to say these things, it's kind of making him worse, to the point where I thought he'd finally go in Mbenga to get his knockdown on the ambassador, but he doesn't. He literally stops within inches of punching him in the face, because a Klingon is probably stronger than a human being. It seems like everyone's bloody stronger than human beings in Star Trek, Grey. But, no serum or nothing. He was literally about to hit him, and he stops and he goes, no, I'm not going to do that. And you mentioned here, amazing restraint to not hit him. You thought, like me, it would probably go a lot worse than that, yeah?
Oh, yeah. I thought he was going to belt him for sure. And he just stopped and held on to his, restrained himself. And you can imagine the so many different emotions he's going through. He's not like, do I clock him? Do I kill him? Do I not do anything? I think at the beginning when he was put on his back 3 times, I think he was holding back. First. I think so. And because he didn't want to get outraged until he finally did.
Yes.
But then stopped.
Amazing.
So it was very, very well done, well acted scene, because you were just kind of like, the whole time you're just going like, oh man, what are they going to do to each other?
Are they going to kill each other or not? But he does show restraint, so respect to Mbenga. During the war, we learned that the ambassador, he was known as the Butcher of Dragal, right? And the ambassador would literally be really cold-hearted, and he's not called ambassador back then. I don't recall what his name is in this. It's kind of not really important for that, but he's known as ambassador when he's on the Enterprise, so that's why we're going with that. He's known as the Butcher of Dragal. He literally kills everyone, including his own. It literally, as long as they're not, if they're Klingon soldiers, they're okay. But I think even later on, he gets to a point or certain missions where he's literally just killing everyone. Like, you sometimes get this in war back in the day as well. They would literally, you could hit your own troops, but it's a risk we need to take. Let's send in the bombs and literally we'll kill everyone. And at least, yes, we've killed some of our own, but we've also killed the enemy as well. So that is brutal. And it sounds like a Klingon thing to do back then anyway. And we see this, we do see this in Dragal with like flashbacks with so many dead turning up. There's so many bodies.
You see part of the fight, but the fight is so close and dark and weird angles.
It's hard to see.
You can't really tell what's going on.
Yeah,
and of course there's a reason for that, as we see later on.
Well, yeah, yes, we do. That's brilliant when we get to that part. When some of the bodies are coming in for Mbenga and Chapel to patch up, one of the guys we see in the morgue, I guess, the temporary morgue, is the first guy is the young lad that Mbenga patched up. And yeah, and I knew that was coming, Gray. I'll be honest with you, man. I knew that was coming. I knew he'd be the first one back dead, and I think you did as well, to be honest with you.
Also, the Andorian captain, or whatever he was, he was done too.
He was done.
And most of his troop, I guess, that went in.
Yeah, and the when you see the Andori, like Mbenga gets pissed off. I mean, he shows anger in his eyes. Like, the actor is so well restrained, you can show anger without shouting and going nuts as well, because this is something I almost forgot about, Gray. I had to turn up the subtitles for a brief period of time, because later on towards the end of the episode, and I'll tell you that part when we get to it, and Benga's talking to Pike at the end, and the actor can be so softly spoken sometimes, like almost whispering.
Yeah.
I struggled, man, and I'm really good at understanding accents, but I
think I know
struggled
what
with them.
scene you're talking about. I definitely jacked up the audio.
Yeah.
To hear a little.
So that's not enough to take it down a half a point. There'd have to be several nitpicks for that to happen, but it's just something that they should have picked up on, I think, and fixed that one. But anyway, so he's pissed off. He's shown anger without showing anger, if that makes sense. He sees that young boy he tried to save. He sees the Andorian captain who was nice enough to him, I guess. And the Andorian, one of the things is nice, very much like Klingons, and he's got his own knife on him. And he literally grabs the knife that Andorian still had in his body, and he just heads off, and you're like, oh, and Benga, the hardcore killer, is back. Oh, yeah. So I knew it was coming at this stage here. It kind of gets to that point. I found this interesting, or I don't know if I agree with it. Maybe I do. Back in Enterprise Grey, Una comes in to see Pike and asks to change course to a closer starbase. And she explains it kind of well that the bastard has to get off the ship like now because morale is going downhill, and it's not going to work out. Now, Pike tries to argue the point, but when she explains it, she's like, I get that we're trying to do peace, it's fine, but you can't force people to feel a certain way. You can't make them be different people. They are trying their best. He reluctantly agrees. And says, yeah, change course, it'll get us into Starbase next day. I think that was the right thing to do, Gray, but why then bring him on board in the first place if they knew surely to God it wouldn't work?
Well, first of all, it wasn't their mistake of bringing him on.
It was orders, wasn't it?
It was orders from way up high.
Yeah, that's true.
So they had no choice but to obey the orders. Now, later on, I think the reason why he changed, Pike decided what he decided is because ultimately the captain is responsible for the health of his crew.
Yeah,
and that kind of supersedes a lot of stuff that maybe he was ordered to do.
Yeah.
So when Una made a good case about being a bunch of other people on the ship were in the war too, and they're saying she knew this was going to get out of hand at some point, and so Pike listened, finally agreed, and for the betterment of the crew, he decided to go ahead and do it, which I thought was really neat because you don't see that often in a lot of shows like that. They'll just kind of they'll just cause more trouble. But it made total sense, and the writing was really good, and he did the right decision, so it was good. It was good.
Yep, I think he done the right thing. He was reluctant at the start, but I'm sure he'd pull out some order if Starfleet ever countered him on that one. He'd be like, well, order such and such means that the health of my crew comes first, and right, okay. Right. So it was the right thing to do. Back in Jagal, Mbenga is properly geared up. He is not looking like a doctor anymore. He is looking like a Black Ops specialist with all the phasers and knives on him and stuff. And Chapel spots him and was like, "No, don't do it." And he's like, "I've got to end this. I can't let all these dead bodies be for nothing." Just before Mbenga disappears, though, he opens up his case and he's got some super serum left. Of course he does. Some Mountain Dew. He gives a vial to Chapel and he says, use this if the Klingons come to the camp and you have to leave and you get people out, use that. And he's obviously, you don't see it, but he's got a vial for himself as well, as we do see in a little bit. And it's heating up nicely. It is heating up nicely, this episode. Now, the Klingon bastard comes to sickbay. He hears that he's been dropped off the day after Grey. He is saying, I won't get that other sparring session with you, Doctor. It's a kind of shame. And Benga's having none of it, to the point where he actually just shouts at him, like, stop, shut up. I think he's losing his cool now. Yeah, and I don't blame the guy. How long? Few days he's put up with this crap. Now, hold on to your seats here, ladies and gentlemen. They talk in detail about what happened back in the war and this term, Butcher of Jagal, and it turns out the Butcher of Jagal is actually Dr. Mbenga. And I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that one at all.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
they flash back because instead of the ambassador, then general, killing all his crew,
Yeah.
it was M'Benga that came in because he was going to kill the general, and so he killed the crew. And it was just like, oh shit. And then when the ambassador realizes this, he's going like, oh man, I went through all this, ridicule and people calling me this because you're the one that actually did it. All the shoot was coming out, and the two of them are just like, they don't even know what to say. They're getting angry at each other, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
It really was. I didn't. No one's seen that
By the
coming.
way, prior to that, we forgot to say he was looking at what call it. M'Benga was looking at an old box, apparently of stuff that he kept from the war or whatever.
Yeah,
And
true.
inside that box was a Klingon knife that he was looking at.
Was it the Klingon knife? Was it not the one he used in Cho'Gall? Because I remember this as well.
Yeah, but I believe it. I thought it was a Klingon knife that the Andorian took from a Klingon.
Yeah, that's it. That's what it is. Yeah.
And he kept it all these years. So you see him staring in the box, and then just so happens the ambassador comes in, and you see M'Benga putting his back to the box so that he doesn't see
what's in there. Well,
yeah.
I actually thought it was going to be super serum, I'll be honest with you, Gray, but no, I didn't forget to mention it because it's in this section coming after. Yeah. It is you're right, it is a Klingon knife. The Andorian had a Klingon knife. I thought it was an Andorian knife, I don't know why. No, it is a Klingon knife.
I mean, I could be wrong, but I believe it's...
I think you're right. I'll go with that as well, mate. I think you're right. He still has it in the box. He doesn't want the ambassador to see what's in there. All you see now is basically the bastard is just egging him on, and maybe not purposely, but he's pissing him off, and he gets to the stage where he just goes up and puts a, because he's still trying to make peace. He's like, listen, let's move on. Let's not be friendly. Let's try and sort this out for the matter of peace. And then it ends with the bastard putting a hand on M'Benga's shoulder, and then you don't see what happens next. You just see it kind of from the other side of the glass in sickbay, and you just hear a scuffle and bangs and crashes and then Chapel sees this from the other side. She comes round, and her view is the bastard on the deck with a knife through his heart, that same knife, and you're just like, now we can discuss here now, Gray. It could have went anyway. It could have been obviously M'Benga saying, it's not, I didn't start the fight. He's ended it, self-defense. But then you mentioned at some point here that it could have been the ambassador that started it because of what he learned from M'Benga.
Right. I think it was very well written, and I really liked the way they filmed it, and I really liked the way that the only one that really had the bird's eye view was Chapel. And when we see what happens beyond the smoked glass or whatever, it was a perfect call because we'll never really know who actually done it, because either one could have had the motive to do it. Now, if we're going to believe M'Benga and that the ambassador did it, you could say, okay, that makes sense, because the ambassador is really pissed that he finds out that who killed all his crew and everything, and he just got angry. And he was angry. But it could have went either way, and I really like that because now we're going to be left with this, and we'll never know really whether the truth is out.
That's the right way to go about it, I think. It's the best storytelling way,
Yep.
We should mention, you do see the flashbacks briefly from like weird angles in the dark of M'Benga before, when he was killing all those Klingon soldiers, and he did say, I was looking for you, ambassador. I don't know if he looked for him or when his soldiers held him back. I think he tried to get to him somehow. He couldn't, but he killed all the rest of his immediate troops anyway. So, and the scene right after that is of Chapel backing up M'Benga, or calling their friend, saying, well, I saw the whole thing, and Bastard started the fight, and M'Benga just defended himself. She didn't see no fight, she just saw him dead. So they've lied, both of them. I think they've lied. I think he started it. And while I don't blame him, Gray, Star Trek's not about that cold-blooded killing from a Starfleet, a chief medical officer of the flagship.
Yeah, but you can also argue the point that he didn't start it, and that he still upheld the Starfleet morale, and he did say that he did not start it. So in this case, you would have to give him the benefit of the doubt and believe that he didn't.
Yeah.
But you always have that little thing at the back of your head going like, man,
Did he? Did he not?
See it,
And
I mean,
the writers done their job well. Because we'll probably never know. This is why we're having this debate over it. It could go either way. It's kind of fascinating, but certainly at least Chapel's lied. So that is a bit extreme. But again, I don't blame her. She's defending her friend and her colleagues, so I get that. We'll never know. The last kind of scene is we touched on this before. Pike and Benga are talking in sickbay. And Pike's like, listen, I've known you for God knows how long, we're friends, you can tell me anything, Joseph. And he's like, yeah, I know, known each other a long time. And they're kind of just discussing what's happened, but Benga emphasises once again that he did not start the fight. But then this is the bit where he whispers, and I could hear him. I literally had to turn on subtitles, and he whispers, and he went, but I'm glad he's dead. I was like, whoa, shit, okay. And Pike's obviously like, wow, okay, right.
Well, I think he had to be truthful, which he was.
Yeah.
And I think Pike, maybe even if it was, hard to hear, I think he understood. Didn't mean it was right what he said, but he definitely understood.
Yeah.
Especially what he went through. So.
Yeah. He does mention that, while they know each other pretty well, Pike didn't go through the war and Benga did. Unless you were there, you won't understand, and that's true for all three of those guys that were there. You'll never fully understand.
I remember too, now that I think about it, he also emphasized to Pike, he says, you weren't there, and he says you didn't see that the general killed children too.
Yeah.
He was indiscriminate. So when he threw that in there, then you knew he was like, yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. That's a very good point, Gray. I think Pike's just taking it on board. He doesn't really say much. He just hears what he had to say and then kind of walks out, and that's fine. I think it's. Yeah. I'm not saying they're not friends anymore, but I think maybe Pike's thinking, what did really happen there? I have no evidence though, so it's a difficult one for him as well. They just leave it as is. They might come back to it at some point in the future. Who knows? Kind of hope they do, only if it's written well again. Otherwise, just leave us in the dark, and we're okay with that. So yeah, it was as Benga's doing a little personal log, and he talks about Biobed 2 being down, and he says sometimes things can be fixed, sometimes things can't, and it was a beautiful metaphor about that episode, what he was going through, Gray. And just as it finishes, literally, he's patched it up because he said it will need to be replaced at one point. A little alarm comes on the biobed, and I ask you here what's going on. And most likely, Gray, you're right. It's probably just foretelling that it needs to be replaced in the near future. But I thought maybe it's something else that's coming up in episode 9 or 10, or maybe reading into it too much. Perhaps, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it was anything to read into. I think it was just to emphasize what he just said.
Yeah.
So no sooner did he patch it up to work for now, and he walked away, the things just fritzed out again. Yeah. And so it just emphasizes what he said. You can work on things, but if you truly fix it or replace it, you can't. It's always going to be like that.
And sometimes you can't fix it. So, but yeah, I will. Actually, I'm going to steal the limelight slightly, Greggy, and go Masco first. You don't mind, mate. I gave this 10 out of 10. I was trying to find a fault in it, not because I'm that kind of person. I don't give out 10. None of us give out 10 out of 10s willy nilly. We've only. Right. This will be our third time doing it, and it doesn't happen often at all. So they deserve full credit for it. Excellent episode for me. Perfect balance of great storytelling. First of all, acting. The CGI when it was used was great. It looked like a war zone, unlike the episode before, where the background didn't look amazing. And someone touched on that, Grace. Someone said they maybe done it on purpose so that the animators, when they were doing the animated version of it, it would be easier for them or look more comparable. And I went, possibly, yeah. Someone left a comment in our last video on that one, so that's why you should always leave comments below, guys, because I do like reading your comments. So, yeah, I really, really loved it. Couldn't find a negative anywhere. And for me, Gray, this... in fact, I'll let you give your score first, because may very well you might have the same points as I.
So that means you gave it a 10?
Yeah, I gave it 10 out of 10. I'm sure I said that, didn't I?
I did the same thing and for many of the same reasons. I thought it was an excellent episode. I really think that it's the best of any of the episodes up to this point, meaning season 1 and 2.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe there'll be another 10 somewhere. I mean, that'd be great.
It certainly won't be next week.
But right now, this is for the series run. This was the best episode of anything they've done.
Yeah.
And I also think it was so good that they need to look back at this kind of episode and just realize that when your writing is on top notch, look what can happen.
Yeah.
And how good it is. And they need to make more episodes like that. Take that kind of care. And then every episode could be, at least an 8 or above if they do that kind or take that kind of care.
Yeah.
And I think it was, for me, it got very emotional at times, which if you can pull a certain amount of emotions out of somebody that's watching a show, whatever it might be, that means that the writing, directing, acting are right on, and they've done their job better than even maybe they think. It probably affected me a little bit more, only because I have a very, very close friend of mine who was in Vietnam.
Not me.
Not you, but a very, very close friend of mine. Still very, very good friend of mine. He was in the Vietnam War.
Wow.
And he suffers from PTSD because he was part of a friendly fire incident, and there's nothing worse than that.
Oh, God.
He had his troop of guys. He was in a unit, and there was like I think there's 8 or 10 guys in the unit, and he saw them get mowed down. And he was one of the survivors. Only a couple of them did. So you had your friends and your unit that you were close to, and you get friendly fire from your own people, and that was it.
Yeah,
nothing can be worse than that when in war and stuff like that. So I know, I know just from some experience that he's told me, and how horrific that can be. So when you see something like that, in an episode like that, which is bringing it all out, it's just like, whoa.
And Gray, your friend's a Trekkie as well, so I believe, yeah. Yep. So hopefully he watches that episode and/or review, and I'd be curious what his thoughts are after. He'd probably just kind of say what you've just said there, actually. And it's real life, people. I wish we could just use a hotkey and turn that shit friendly fire on and off, but these things unfortunately happen, and this episode encompassed it really, really well, I think, because I think Benga clearly is the one that's had the worst. The worst experience. No doubt. So, and for me, Gray, the reason I love this is because it got a bit darker, like Discovery dark, but not as bad. This is one of the downsides of Discovery. It got really, really dark too often. And Star Trek's about the light, but it brought it down dark enough to then show you the light at several occasions where it brought it back up, and that is perfect Star Trek storytelling. It just. And I know you feel the same as well, hence why we often have scores that are similar, because we like and dislike very similar things in Star Trek. So, yeah, they've done a really, really good job. Well done, guys. I know next week's episode is going to be an absolute shit show. I can't see how I'm going to like a musical ever. I don't like them in the best of days, but I respect them because they're very popular forms of entertainment for people. They just don't work with Star Trek episodes. How this episode is going to be more than a 6 will baffle me. If it gets a 6, it'll be doing well. I will try.
We're already predicting we haven't even seen it yet.
I know. I say don't do this, but I just don't see how it works. Okay, next week it'll be interesting for us to cover this.
Yeah, in case anybody forgets, it's called Subspace Rhapsody. So supposedly it's going to be a musical, and I don't know. I'm like Trev. I'm just sitting there going like, why? And then I start hearing more about it. There's going to be 10 songs. They're going to sing 10 songs.
Some of them are originals.
Like, no. Yeah, I know. And I'm sitting there going like, okay, sing a song here, sing a song there. That's bad enough. But 10 songs, I'm sitting there going, ugh.
Great. I have to give a shout to the guy's video that I sent on to you, the guy from Sci Trek channel, right? He made a very good point. He's like, it's not, Star Trek is not about musicals, right? How can anything, and because science, this is the thing, Star Trek is based on science fiction. It is science fiction. It's not fantasy like Star Wars, hence why I've always loved Star Trek so much more. It's got to be based in something that's, in theory, possible. There's nothing that we know of or could theoretically be possible to make you start bloody singing without stopping yourself in control. You know, it just makes no sense, man. It's not an episode of bloody Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You know,
Right.
Sorry.
And I think the guy also brought up a good point, saying that that's an episode that you watch once and you'll never see it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there are other episodes that do quirky things that you would go back and see again, like the crossover Lower Decks. We had the same feeling that could have been like not good, ended up being really great, and it would be an episode you'd go back and watch again. So obviously they can pull things off that are different.
Yeah,
but this may be stretching it a little too far.
And we only get 10 hours as well, which is less than half of what we used to get. So it's quality time that we don't want wasted. We get that there's filler episodes, but they add to the Star Trek of the season, the goodness. This won't.
I think that, and we've mentioned this before, and I think that's one of the problems, because since there's not 20 episodes or 20 episodes plus like there was in the older days.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to make a bad episode, you've already made 1/10 of your season bad.
Yeah. And there's been more than one
or more. Right, exactly. So you're under the gun to have to make the best episodes that you can, because you're only showing like 10 of them.
We're possibly get to the stage where maybe a third of the season has not been great by the end of it, possibly.
God, I hope not. I mean,
I know.
We'll see what happens. But there's only the 2 episodes left, right? So.
Yeah. But at least we have Lower Decks in September, so we're not waiting
7,
too long. Yeah. So that wraps us up, and that brings me on to the end part where I say we will have time to do some specials in between. So as much as I love your comments more than the thumbs up or the thumbs down, please put them below. Tell us what you like about this episode. Do you agree with our points? Was it 10 out of 10 for you? I want to actually hear your score before Gray's hand gets sore. But yeah, the usual call to arms, of course. We are mostly focused on the YouTube, but wherever you get your podcasts as well, we're there, certainly for now, at least. And on Twitter at The Trekway as well. And of course, Gray, we do an entertainment podcast with Gray called Gray's Green Room, and he's available on all the same YouTube and podcasts and platforms. And tonight we're doing a gaming podcast. We're podcast daft. We're doing that with our friend Nick. We love our gaming. That's how we all know each other first and foremost. And that's all the same avenues and channels if you search for Extreme PC UK. We'll be on Twitch live tonight, but maybe only a few people get that before that goes out. But yeah, until next week, thank you very much for everything. And until then, do your thing, Mr. Gray.
Live long and prosper, everybody.
See you guys. Bye. Bye.